Hey everybody, and welcome back to another book review. So I just finished the second book in the Secret World of Maggie Gray series, also known as the Drew Collins series by Granger. It's in terms of second book, it's actually a good follow-up. So I think I mentioned in the last review that this book revolves obviously around a girl named Maggie Gray, because that's the name of the series, and her friends. So like over the book, you hear from like other people that are kind of, you know, dealing with some of the same situations, slash in the friend group, and there's some other side characters that go in and out. So overall, for this book, I do give it a little bit higher rating, 4.75. Language goes down a little bit, just a smidge. It's still pretty high, and I think, like, for me, I think part of like the bigger thing that I have with language is like how like people talk to each other in terms of like friendship. Like it's just like they're saying that they're friends and that they're sisters or brothers or whatever, in terms of like friends who are becoming family, but they just talk so derogatory towards each other, and I'm just like, is that really friendship? And people who have those kind of friends are just weird to me. So I think I still struggle with that. But like lore wise, I felt like this book went a lot deeper into the lore of the world that Granger, the author, is trying to create. And so I just really enjoy that side of it. I do, like, I do find it interesting how within the lore, how normal humans are kind of seen as not great, which I get in terms of like some of the characters have been abused by normal humans and stuff like that. But like at other times, it's just kind of like, are there no normal humans that like support this? It just kind of feels like, that they're leaving some normal humans out, and I want to kind of have a little bit more in understanding of that. And then like also with some of the characters who have closer relationships with normal humans, like it's like they don't really stand up for them when they really should. So that's kind of interesting. But second book continues the story. So as we know, Maggie Gray and her friends all wind up at this basically HBCU for magical people called Drew Collins. And in this book, we just kind of are diving more into who Maggie is and who her family is, as they call themselves the First Family. And you come to find out that like this big story that the First Family has spun, that they are descendant from Gaia and like descendant from the moon goddess and all this stuff, is they've just made it up to try and keep power. But then they believe that the moon goddess has been reincarnated into Maggie Gray. And so now they're kind of figuring that out. We also discover that Maggie has a brother that she didn't know about, like full blood brother, who was taken away from their family with what they call a blood curse or a blood contract. And so like once the family rehears about it, basically triggers memory loss. And so Maggie's kind of losing everything. She's lost kind of that connection with her parents. So now they're kind of trying to figure that out. But yeah, it's they're continuing that relationship, and then they are building that relationship, I should say, with her brother, who's known as Bellamy. But then she's also deepening her romantic relationship with a werewolf, and his family is like very against obviously connecting with the First Family, because they're all vampires, and werewolves and vampires don't get along, kind of thing. But then we discover that his sister, so the guy that Maggie's dating is Namir's sister is Maeve, who I really like her as a character. because she goes against the grain. She's different. She is married to one of the other members of the first family. She really loves him, and it's obvious he really loves her, to the point that when it's found out that she has married outside of their pack, that she is like beaten and tortured by her pack, and they don't allow, her mother doesn't allow him to go to the pack to get her, but like mom brings her home and he takes care of her. He like washes all her wounds and makes sure that she's okay, and just like really tends to her like a spouse should, when you're sick, the whole in sickness and in health thing. And like he just really represents that. And so I just really love that piece of the story, because I feel like a lot of the other characters, as is very common in most society, it's just they're all like, oh, we just want to have sex, and like constantly just have sex, and there's nothing else to their relationship, which is fine, if people believe that that's where they want to be, but for the characters in the book, some of the characters it doesn't fully make sense, and others it does, but for them to just really have this lovely solid relationship, and then when she's kind of, Maze is kind of like, okay, so, I'm out of it and I've gotten better. What are we going to do now? And, she starts doing the dream again. She's like, oh, and we can like have this house and, our kids, whatever they turn out to be, we'll figure it out and all the things. And, my brothers can come visit. And he's like, no, if you talk to anybody in your family, anybody in the pack outside of your mother, like I will kill them. And he's just like so hardcore. He's like, you hurt my wife. You've ousted her from the pack. You have no chance of survival. And so it's just very, very interesting. So yeah, like I said, I gave this one a little bit higher score, 4.75. Still not a full 5 for me. Again, language, is probably the biggest factor for me, with this one. Just because like, I just feel like sometimes it overshadows the impact of the scene. So yeah, so like there's that side of it. But overall, really good series in terms of lore. I love when we kind of change up how lore is viewed. I also, more so in the second book, feel really more connections to characters. Like I said, I really feel connected to Maze, because of her kind of outsider vibe of like, she's part of this pack. She's expected to do all these things. And she's kind of pushed out of the pack because, we come to find out that one of her uncles had actually molested her. But because she's outside of the pack, she makes friends with the vampires, and she's doing this whole traitor thing, and she understands what's wrong with it, but like, she's okay with like the sacrifice that she's making for her family. So I really like that. I feel like her character is really, really well written. And then, another thing that I find very interesting, and I don't think in general, I don't know what the mixture of people is that are following me on this channel here, but, a lot of people don't talk about HBCU culture versus PWI culture, but it's very well represented here. And not just even HBCU culture, but also like within Black culture of just like how we view each other. And so even though it is, mythological creatures, magical creatures, et cetera, it's a lot of stereotypes that I think in the Black community that we have towards each other within the Black community that we just don't talk about. So like, I know the biggest one for me, and a lot of people talk to me about this all the time, is like the fact that like, I personally did not go to an HBCU. And to be honest, neither did my parents, or their siblings. I have cousins who have gone to HBCUs, and such, and all of my grandparents went to HBCUs, but we just didn't. And it's not because we didn't really know about them or anything like that. For me, it was never pushed on me about HBCUs or anything like that. Looking back on my college experience, I enjoyed my college experience. I did go to a PWI, but looking back, parts of me do wish I had gone to an HBCU. But, I get judged for that frequently, from other members of the Black community. And so, like, I get judged for, and I think I've talked about this before, but I get judged for not having gone to an HBCU. I get judged for the fact that I, for the most part, went to PWIs my entire education career, even though I lived in areas where it would now be considered the hood or ghetto or whatever. And I hung out with people, like I have friends, who also grew up in those areas. I even now work in very close to the area that I actually grew up in. I work in a school in that area. And so, like, I talk to the kids about it. Like, I grew up in this area, guys. Like, I know everything. But people judge me for that. People judge me for the way I talk, for, how my hair is and all that stuff. And that is all brought out in this story in different ways. So, like, they talk about the sirens are, quote unquote, really pretty, but at the same time, they're like, a couple characters call them like the hood rat pretty, where they've got like the wigs and the weaves that are just like super brightly colored, and their edges all like swoop down to basically their eyebrows. It's a bang, guys. Just admit it. You're swooping down your bangs. Y'all can fight me. It's a bang. But like, they talk about that piece of it. They talk about how there's all these like legacy students, and most of the legacy students are super wealthy, and there's this like, upper crust section within the Black community of wealthy Black people who look down upon everybody else in the Black community. And then they talk a little bit about marrying outside of your group. So there's the sirens and the nymphs, which are very, very similar, and they both are born of people of the water, but the sirens don't like the nymphs because, they came out of the water late or whatever. And so there's this like judgment thing between them. And they talk about like, oh, we can't marry into a nymph family, and a nymph can't marry into a siren. It's fine if y'all sleep together, but like, y'all can't marry. And, just kind of talking about that even within the Black community of like, oh, you are from this side of the country or that side of the city or whatever, and you can't marry into the other side of it. And we do that in the Black community. And so it's just interesting to see it represented from a mythical standpoint, instead of just other Black people. And just, a lot of those stereotypes that we have within the community, which is just very fascinating to look at. As the story is happening, I'm like, dude, we do this to each other. And so, yeah, it's very interesting, just the use of mythology and everything to talk about actual issues within the Black community. So yeah, I mean, like, I again, I liked this book better than the first one. I felt like the first one did not have a good plot structure and left on the climax, whereas this book definitely had an up and a down, and we were good. And so I'll be very interested to see what the third book does, like how it goes. Yeah, just like super excited for whatever. Yeah. So yeah, thank you as always for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you so choose. And yeah, really hoping folks are enjoying reading. If you have read this series, I know this is a newer series, but if you've read this series, feel free to comment your thoughts and feelings. Love to hear from some other people. So yeah, there you have it. All right, I think that's it. I will talk to you guys in the next book review. Bye.